Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation to speak tonight, Marie. It's a great pleasure. My name's Ross Ingebrigtsen. I'm the head of communications for the SNP at Holyrood, as you've just heard. So I'm very much a behind-the-scenes guy, so I don't often get to speak in front of people, so it's a great honour. I grew up in Kirkcaldy. I don't live here now. I now live in Edinburgh, but I have to say, in my time living here, I would never in my life have imagined seeing so many people in a room considering the prospect of a yes vote for independence. I think it's incredibly exciting. I'm heavily involved on a daily basis at work with the referendum campaign, so I'm going to talk tonight a bit about my experiences, and I'm going to say why I think ultimately we will be successful next year in securing a yes vote. The main reason for that, I have to say, is I think there is only one side, as far as I can see, actually imagining a better Scotland. I just can't see the No campaign organising an event called Imagine a Better Scotland. However, I'm going to do my speech in kind of two parts tonight, because I think it's first important to give you the messages that we're trying to put out from the Yes campaign about why independence, or what independence means. And after I've done that, I'm going to talk a bit about what the No campaign are saying about what a yes vote means, and I'm going to leave it to you to decide which you think is more credible. So in terms of our messages, I think there are two reasons why we need a yes vote. There's the economic case and there's the democratic case. Now, Alistair just actually outlined very well the democratic case. He's got more life experience than I do of all that, but I have to say it's all, I totally concur with it. The economic case, I think, is one of the underside. It's the key reasons, the key factors for people who are still thinking about voting yes is, can we afford to be independent? The answer to that is an emphatic yes, it absolutely is. And I think actually that a key achievement of the Yes campaign so far is that where No campaign politicians previously said that an independent Scotland would be like Bangladesh, would be like Greece, all these other things, now they're all queuing up to say, oh, of course Scotland can afford to be independent. That's because they actually can't argue with the facts. The facts are overwhelming. Now, I want to give you three key facts. I don't want to bamboozle everyone with stats, but there's three key reasons why we can afford to be independent. The first is that in each of the last 30 years, the amount of tax revenue generated per head in Scotland has been greater than the rest of the UK. In each of the last 30 years, the amount of tax revenue generated per head in Scotland has been greater than the rest of the UK. So in good times and in bad times, we've still generated more tax. A similar stat is that last year, we contributed 9.9% of the UK's tax revenues, but we only received 9.3% of UK spending. Okay? We contributed 9.9%, we received 9.3%. If we'd been independent last year, we would have had a relative surplus of £4.4 billion, which is a huge amount of money, frankly. And here's my third fact, before anyone thinks this is all just down to oil revenues, which is repeatedly what the No campaign say, even without oil, our GDP per head is virtually identical to that of the UK. Now, with oil, it actually becomes about 1/5 higher. So these are all stats that nobody disputes. And as I say, they've had to accept on the other side that, yes, we would be better off if we were independent. So very briefly, I think it's useful just to outline why we're such a strong economy, because it's not all just about oil, which is what you hear. Of course, we are the EU's oil capital. We actually are responsible for about 64% of the EU's oil production, which is a huge amount. And of course, we've been getting told since the 1970s that it's about to run out, but clearly that's not happening because investment's currently at its highest level in 30 years. As I say, it's not just oil. We are the renewables capital of the EU. We actually have 25% of the EU's offshore wind and tidal resource. Think about that, a quarter of the EU's offshore wind and tidal resource potential, as well as 10% of the EU's wave resource potential. These are future industries which, the UK as well as the EU, they need this renewable technology, so we're very important to them. We have a food and drink industry with a turnover of £12 billion a year, and I gather that we actually export 40 bottles of whisky every second, and we're actually the world's third largest salmon producer. And obviously we have a tourism industry which is thriving. Lonely Planet magazine said that we're the number 3 place to visit in 2014, which is quite exciting. We've got more universities in the world top 200 per head of population than any other nation on earth. I could literally go on all night, because I haven't even talked about the creative industries, the financial services industry, the computer games industry, life sciences, but the central point for all of this is don't let anybody ever tell you that Scotland doesn't have what it takes to be an independent country. We're one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Okay, so why do we need independence then? I think you actually had a very articulate case for it there. The central message we try to get across is the democratic case, that it's fundamentally better for all of us if the decisions about Scotland are taken by those who care about Scotland most. That is the people living in Scotland. Now, as you've just heard, we do have some independence, which was given to us by devolution. So we do have decision-making powers over health and education. And that has allowed us to lead the way on many things such as free personal care and the smoking ban, etc. But unfortunately, we're still subject to some very bad decisions from Westminster, such as the bedroom tax and the steady dismantling of the welfare state, which I just don't think any government of any hue in an independent Scotland would actually allow to happen. The logical next step, therefore, is that we get decision-making powers over our economy. Basically because we are a hugely wealthy country, as I've outlined, but we're actually the fourth most unequal society in the developed world. The fourth most unequal society in the developed world. I've talked about some of the energy potential we have. We're such a wealthy country in that respect, but a third of people in this country live in fuel poverty. So if we get independence, we can elect the governments we choose. We can produce an economic policy which is tailored to Scottish needs rather than the needs of London and the south east of England. We can build a fairer social security system. We can remove Trident from Scottish waters, as you've heard, and most importantly, actually, we can keep some of the public services in public hands which are currently being privatised, such as Royal Mail. So that's the positives for me. That's the economic case and the democratic case. Nothing I've actually said is particularly controversial, I don't think, and everything I've said is backed up by evidence, particularly the financial stats. What I want to do now is just compare what we're saying about a yes vote with what the no campaign are saying about a yes vote. And as I say, you can decide which one's is more credible. I'll just give a bit of my personal experience with some of the stories I've had to give answers to, frankly, some of these scare stories. But first I should say, actually, that they do actually call themselves Project Fear privately. One of them actually let slip to a newspaper a while back. This is what they call internally. And you're about to see why, frankly. Just give me a wee second. Now, some of these do sound quite credible. The first was apparently an independent Scotland, we would straight away lose the AAA credit rating that we've enjoyed as part of the UK. That one kind of fell apart when the UK itself lost the AAA credit rating, not because of us, but because of the mismanagement of the economy going on down the road. And as you've just heard, we're actually a much financially stronger country than the UK. Then there was the claim that people in Scotland would have to pay international mobile phone roaming charges to call people in England. That also kind of fell apart straight away when it emerged the EU has just voted to abolish roaming charges well before we would actually become independent. Let's see. Another common one that we get is claims that we won't be able to watch EastEnders in an independent Scotland. For me, actually, that might be a plus point if that was true. Maybe for some other people, I don't know. But I mean, that one is just rubbish as well. I mean, has anybody? All I would say to people thinking about that is go and look at the schedule for RTE1 in Ireland. Okay, the main television channel there. That is full of BBC programmes. Okay, it would be no different in Scotland. Now you'll like this one. This is an actual newspaper headline from July. It says, "Vince Cable, I'm not scaremongering. Children's clothes will cost more in an independent Scotland." Right. Then there was claims that England would have no choice but to bomb Scottish airports in order to defend itself from attack if Scotland became independent. That's just wacky, that one. I don't understand. Then there were questions published by the Westminster Scottish Affairs Committee querying if people could still buy wine from the Sunday Times Wine Club or whether the school curriculum would include English. Now, I've been asked to respond to these stories. The journalists have come through these stories, right? And here's my personal favourite. Claims that the Westminster government would seize custody of the giant pandas at Edinburgh Zoo post-independence. Now, I think I speak for everybody here when I say they may take our lives, but they will never take our pandas, okay? So, as you can see, it's kind of getting ridiculous. The No campaign, there seems to be no coordination and very little thought. But interestingly, these stories are actually getting less and less coverage. An interesting comment from Ian McWhirter in the Sunday Herald last week, which I thought summed it up. He just looked at the previous week's scare stories, just in 1 week. He says, so there you have it. Scotland would be an impoverished and defenceless country, infiltrated by Al-Qaeda, shunned by Europe, barred from England, forced into deep cuts in public services, and run by politicians who are economical with the truth. You know, he's just talking about 1 week. It completely sums it up. There's a vacuum of ideas, frankly, in the No campaign about what Scotland should look like in the future. And that's why they're resorting to these stories. Now, just finally, one or two of these stories, I think, sadly, do seem to have a bit of traction. So I thought it's useful maybe just to highlight a couple. Just because, obviously, these ones, when you think about them, are just also absolute rubbish. One of these is that there would be border posts between Scotland and England if we were independent, and you'd have to use passports to get into England. Now, why would this be the case? You don't need a passport to get into Ireland, and you don't need a passport to get into anywhere in the common travel area. Like the Isle of Man, for example, that's not even the EU. So are they seriously saying that in the UK you could travel to Ireland without a passport, but they would insist you use a passport to get to Scotland? It's just madness. The common sense position with that one is simply that we would inherit the common travel area. It would carry on as before. It works for the rest of the UK, and it works for us. So why would we change it? I thought, interestingly, last week, here's a Tory MP for the south east of England. He was asked about this on TV last week, and he just said, pull the other one. Now, if a Tory MP from the south east of England could think that story is rubbish, and I'm sure everyone else can see through it. A similar one is that we will be thrown out of the EU. Now, this one is bonkers, frankly. If we vote for independence, apparently we'll be thrown out of the EU on day one. We'll be forced to the back of the queue, as somebody said, and all these other things. William Hague, Foreign Secretary, he repeated this week. Now, just think about this one. There are tens of thousands of EU citizens living in Scotland from other parts of the EU. What is going to happen to them? Are they apparently supposed to be expelled from Scotland while we renegotiate our membership, and then they all come back in afterwards? It's just madness. Again, the common sense reality is that after a yes vote, we'll simply have a chat with the EU and we'll talk about any sort of things that need to be ironed out, and it's fine, we'll carry on. You know, we've been a member of the EU for 40 years, so we already meet all the criteria. There's no issue there. And frankly, the only threat to Scotland's membership of the EU comes from the UK government's decision to try and hold a referendum on ripping us out of the EU in 2017. You know, that's what the real issue is. So in both these cases, basically, a little common sense says it's nonsense. So all I would ask is that you, for my sanity as a press officer, is that whenever you hear stories like this, just think, what's the common sense thing? What's the common sense answer? What is in everyone's interests? Because in so many cases, the UK government, they're saying one thing right now, such as with shipbuilding this week actually, but they would say something completely different after a yes vote, because we're still going to be pals with the rest of the UK. Ultimately, we have nothing to fear but Project Fear itself. So in conclusion, I think people are going to vote, well, I'm certain people are going to vote yes next year, simply because the yes campaign is the only campaign offering a positive vision for the future of Scotland. And I don't think it will not be achieved by what people do and don't read in the papers. I think it's far more important just to hear what your family and friends say and just kind of careful consideration of the arguments. So my final request to you is don't wake up on the 19th of September next year wishing you did more to secure a yes vote. The real debate, the central question that we all have to answer next year is who can be trusted to make the best decisions for Scotland? Our own Parliament here in Scotland, or a Westminster system which increasingly just doesn't represent the votes or values of the people who live and work here. So you've got a couple more very interesting contributions tonight, but please let's all leave tonight pledging just to stop just imagining a better Scotland, and let's pledge to win a yes vote so we can actually start building a better Scotland. Thank you very much.
A fond kiss and then we sever. Hey, farewell and then forever. Deep in heart-wrung tears I'll pledge thee. Warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee. Who shall say that fortune grieves him, while the star of hope she leaves him, meaning cheerful twinkle lights me, dark despair around benights me. I'll ne'er blame my partial fancy, nothing could Nancy, but to see her was to love her. Love got her and love forever. Had we never loved so kindly, had we never loved so blindly, never met or never parted, we had ne'er been broken hearted. A fond kiss and then we sever, a farewell and then forever. Deep in heart-wrung tears I'll pledge thee, warring sighs and groans I'll wait.